Tariffs are taxes, but they aren't just any kind of taxes. These aren't your run-of-the-mill taxes on income or property that you might be familiar with. Tariffs are specific taxes imposed on goods imported from other countries, affecting international trade. Imagine you're a business owner who imports fancy Italian shoes to sell in your American boutique. These shoes are a hit with your customers. When those shoes arrive at the US border, the government imposes a tariff on them, essentially a tax that must be paid before the goods can enter the country. This tariff makes the shoes more expensive for you, the business owner, as you now have to pay extra to get them into your store. Now you're faced with a critical decision. You have to figure out how to handle this additional cost. You can either absorb the cost of the tariff, which would reduce your profit margins and potentially hurt your business's bottom line, or you can pass that cost on to your customers by raising the price of those stylish Italian shoes, making them more expensive for shoppers. Most businesses choose the latter option, and that's how tariffs ultimately affect consumers like you and me. The increased prices at the store are a direct result of these import taxes. This can lead to decreased sales if customers decide the higher prices aren't worth it, impacting the overall economy. Tariffs are a powerful tool in international trade policy, influencing the flow of goods and the economic relationships between countries. The use of tariffs is a tactic as old as international trade itself. Dating back to ancient civilizations, tariffs were used to control the flow of goods and generate revenue for governments. They were a means to ensure that local markets thrived and that foreign goods did not flood the market unchecked. Governments employ them for various reasons, but the underlying goal is often the same: to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. By imposing tariffs, governments can make imported goods more expensive, encouraging consumers to buy locally produced items instead. This not only supports local businesses, but also helps in maintaining employment levels within the country. In recent years, US President Donald Trump made headlines by imposing tariffs on goods from countries like Canada, China, Mexico, and the European Union. These tariffs were part of a broader strategy to renegotiate trade deals and address what he perceived as imbalances in international trade. Trump's rationale for these tariffs was rooted in his America First policy. He believed that prioritizing American interests would lead to a stronger economy and more robust job market. He argued that other countries were engaging in unfair trade practices, selling their products in the US at artificially low prices and putting American companies at a disadvantage. These practices, according to Trump, were detrimental to the US economy and needed to be addressed through stringent measures. Tariffs, in his view, were a way to level the playing field and bring back manufacturing jobs to the US. By making foreign goods more expensive, he hoped to incentivize companies to produce more within the country, thereby boosting local industries and creating more job opportunities for American workers. One of the primary objectives of imposing tariffs is to encourage domestic production. The idea is simple. If imported goods become more expensive due to tariffs, consumers are more likely to opt for cheaper, domestically produced alternatives. This, in turn, is supposed to lead to increased demand for American-made products, boosting domestic manufacturing and creating jobs. However, the reality of tariffs and their impact on domestic production is often more complex. While tariffs can provide a temporary boost to certain industries, they can also have unintended consequences, such as driving up costs for businesses that rely on imported components and making American products less competitive in the global market. The imposition of tariffs often sends shockwaves through the global economy, creating uncertainty and volatility in financial markets. Businesses operating in a globalized world rely on predictable trade policies to make informed decisions about investments, production, and pricing. When tariffs are introduced or changed abruptly, it disrupts these carefully laid plans and injects a degree of risk and unpredictability into the market. This uncertainty can lead to a decline in investment as businesses become hesitant to commit to long-term projects when the rules of the game are constantly changing. It can also result in currency fluctuations, making international transactions more expensive and complex. Long-term consequences. A shrinking economy, While the immediate impact of tariffs might manifest as market volatility and business uncertainty, the long-term consequences can be even more profound, potentially leading to a slowdown in economic growth. When tariffs make imported goods more expensive, it can fuel inflation, eroding consumer purchasing power and reducing overall demand. Furthermore, tariffs can disrupt global supply chains that have been built over decades. Businesses often rely on a complex web of suppliers and manufacturers from around the world to source components and finished goods. Tariffs can force companies to re-evaluate these relationships, leading to higher costs and potential disruptions in production. Retaliation. A trade war nobody wins. The imposition of tariffs rarely occurs in a vacuum. In a tit-for-tat response, countries targeted by tariffs often retaliate with their own trade barriers, leading to a trade war. This escalation can have a domino effect, with each round of tariffs further disrupting global trade, harming businesses and ultimately hurting consumers. Trade wars are often lose-lose situations. They rarely achieve their intended goals and often lead to unintended consequences, such as higher prices for consumers, reduced market access for businesses, and strained diplomatic relations between countries. The consumers burden rising prices and limited choices. While the intricacies of tariffs, trade wars, and economic policies might seem distant to the average person, their impact is ultimately felt in the most tangible way through our wallets. When tariffs make imported goods more expensive, businesses have little choice but to pass on those costs to consumers in the form of higher prices. This means that everything from clothing and electronics to groceries and cars can become more expensive. Moreover, tariffs can limit consumer choices by reducing the availability of imported goods or making them prohibitively expensive. Our case study: the US-China trade war. The trade war between the United States and China, which began in 2018 under the Trump administration, serves as a stark example of the complexities and potential pitfalls of using tariffs as a trade weapon. The two economic giants engaged in a series of tariff escalations targeting billions of dollars worth of each other's goods. While the stated goal of the US was to reduce the trade deficit with China and protect American jobs, the trade war had far-reaching consequences for both countries, disrupting global supply chains, increasing costs for businesses and consumers, and fueling uncertainty in the global economy. Conclusion: tariffs, a delicate balancing act. Tariffs are complex economic instruments with far-reaching implications. They are often used by governments to regulate trade between countries, aiming to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. However, the impact of tariffs extends beyond just the economic sphere, influencing political relationships and social dynamics as well. While they can be used as a tool to protect domestic industries and promote certain policy objectives, tariffs can also lead to higher prices for consumers and retaliatory measures from other nations. This can create a ripple effect, impacting various sectors of the economy. Their implementation requires careful consideration of the potential consequences. Policymakers must weigh the benefits of protecting local jobs and industries against the risks of escalating trade tensions and economic isolation. The history of tariffs is replete with examples of unintended consequences, trade wars, and economic harm. From the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, which exacerbated the Great Depression, to more recent trade disputes, the lessons are clear. Tariffs can be a double-edged sword. Understanding the nuances of tariffs, their intended effects, and their potential drawbacks is crucial for informed policymaking and responsible global citizenship. Education and awareness are key to navigating these complex issues. As we navigate the complexities of the global economy, it is essential to consider the broader implications of tariffs. They are not just economic tools, but also instruments that can shape international relations and global stability. It's imperative to remember that tariffs are not a silver bullet solution and should be used judiciously, with a keen awareness of their potential to disrupt, destabilize, and ultimately harm the very economies they are intended to protect. Strategic planning and international cooperation are vital in ensuring that tariffs serve their intended purpose without causing undue harm. With a keen awareness of their potential to disrupt, destabilize, and ultimately harm the very economies they are intended to protect, It is crucial for policymakers to approach tariffs with caution and foresight. Only through careful analysis and strategic implementation can tariffs be used effectively in the global economic landscape.